Good afternoon. Call the meeting of the Board of Public Utilities for the City of Santa Rosa to order. If we may have a roll call, please.
Board Member Wright?
Here.
Board Member DeWitt?
Here.
Board Member Bartholow?
Here.
Board Member Badenfort?
Here.
Vice Chair Arnone?
Here.
And Chair Galvin.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all board members are present.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda, any statements of abstention by board members? Seeing none. We have no study session. Next item on item 5 is approval of the minutes for October 17, 2024. At this time, I'll open up for public comments on the approval of the minutes. If you wish to make a comment, please move to the podium. Seeing no one moved, that'll take care of that item, and the minutes will be approved and entered. We have no staff briefings. We have 4 consent items.
I'll move to adopt the consent items.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for the consent items. At this time, I'll open it up for public comments on items 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and 7.4. Seeing no one rise, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Board Member Wright?
Aye.
Board Member DeWitt?
Oh. Yes.
Board Member Bartholow?
Aye.
Board Member Badenfort?
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnone?
Aye.
And Chair Galvin.
Aye.
And the consent calendar passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 8.1, which is our report item. Director Burke.
Thank you, Chair Galvin and members of the board. Our report item is a professional services agreement with Montrose Environmental Solutions, Inc. for California Environmental Quality Act compliance technical services for the Santa Rosa Water Supply Alternatives Plan. And Peter Martin, our Deputy Director of Water Resources, will be making the presentation.
Sorry about technical difficulties there. Good afternoon, Chair Galvin, members of the board. I did want to spend a little bit of time, since it's been about a year since we've discussed the Water Supply Alternatives Plan, give you a little background before we get into the meat of the action here today. So just to give some quick background, the purpose of the Water Supply Alternatives Plan, which this board approved last year, was to look at ways to enhance Santa Rosa's water supply and mainly mitigate the impacts of shortages due to severe droughts and emergencies. And really, it was an opportunity for us to take a broad look at the feasibility of new water supply options that could come into play in the next few decades to help us deal with those potential shortages. I always like to start and just remind folks that we are heavily reliant on Sonoma water for our water supply. About 92% of our water supply comes from Sonoma water. And then we do have the wells here that are operated seasonally that produce about 7% of our water supply on an annual basis. And then we do have a small amount of urban recycled water, about 140 acre feet that we use in the city. Obviously, the vast majority of our recycled water produced goes to the geysers and the agricultural users as well. Notably, this is something, a point of pride for this organization and just the amount of work that has gone on in water use efficiency over the last few decades. This graph shows that, with population going up over 57% over a 30-year period since 1990, our gallons per capita during that same time went down about 45%. So we have seen large periods of growth that also resulted in being much more efficient with our water supply. Right now, the residential gallons per capita per day is just a little less than, it's about 63, I believe, is the latest figure. And our overall gallons per capita per day, so that includes, businesses in different parts of our community, is about 97 gallons per capita per day. So still continuing to make gains. One of the notable things when you see this trend line, you'll see dips that occur right around the time of droughts. We don't tend to see those water use rebound after those, so never waste a good drought. You get a lot of water use efficiency out of those times. And then this is another graphic that just shows that our highest water use occurred in 2005, but since then we've actually seen, despite that huge population increase of 57%, we use 14% less water today overall than we did in 1990. So, despite population growth, we actually use less water as a community thanks to those investments in water use efficiency. When you're looking out over the next 20 years or more, we have ample supplies in a normal rainfall year to meet our needs, even with the projections in our general plan. So as you can see, our entitlements and the water supplies that are available to us, are going to meet our needs long term. However, we are vulnerable, as I mentioned, because we are so reliant on Sonoma water for our water supply. When Sonoma water has a situation where their storage in Lake Sonoma falls below 100,000 acre feet, they have mandated reductions that requires that they reduce their diversions on the Russian River by 30%. So that could result, obviously, in a substantial reduction in deliveries to Santa Rosa water. Climate change, of course, is expected to increase the frequency of these droughts, and we came relatively close during this last drought to falling below that 100,000 acre foot threshold for our regional water supplies. So, the 30 years of operation plus of Lake Sonoma, this was a time when it actually came pretty close. So, to make up that 30% shortage, if we hit stage 5 of our water shortage contingency plan, you're looking at a pretty substantial shortfall that would have to be made up of 7,500 plus acre feet. With water use efficiency being so good and us continuing to invest in that, it's going to become harder to make up that piece of water if we ever fall under those conditions. So with the water supply alternatives plan, we use this board to inform us on some of the goals that we would want to undertake for this project. Ultimately, what was landed upon was to go through this study and look at ways to meet 30% of the city's water demands with municipal supplies, so our own controlled supplies, to mitigate those impacts of shortages on the Russian River. And then, in case of an emergency, say an earthquake or some other catastrophic failure of our deliveries from Sonoma Water, we could provide 50% of the indoor use. So that was the targets we pursued, which ultimately resulted in a 9 million gallon per day target by 2045. And then the same goes for mitigating peak day demand. It just happens to align with that 9 million gallon per day target as well. So in total, the study looked at how, again, these questions that we wanted to answer, which is how much new water supply is optimal to mitigate the risk of shortages, and then we took a look at over 18 different options, supply options. We used a public process to determine what options we should look at. And then we used that same group in this board to determine the criteria that should be used to assess each supply option. And then out of that study, we developed a series of portfolios. So these are different mixes of water supply options that could help us meet the resiliency goals. And then, of course, the plan itself is what is the most reasonable and adaptive path forward to achieve our goals. So the 4 different portfolios that were discussed in the plan were based upon some different types of drivers. So portfolio 1 was the most economical. There was a desire to look at what could get you the most supply the fastest, and then also to take a look at a portfolio that could give you the most water, a large portfolio. And then we also looked at the portfolio that could be the most adaptive, so we could check in at different points and look at see if there's opportunities to pivot as well. So these options that you see listed here were ones that were screened down to look at for these portfolios. We didn't eliminate the possibility of entertaining those same options that were studied as well later on, should they become more cost-effective or feasible as well. So the decision was made to look at portfolio 4, again, which was looking at adding additional wells, converting emergency wells, and then always continuing to do work on water use efficiency. And then we also looked at considering and doing technical feasibility studies on a variety of potable reuse, and aquifer storage and recovery opportunities that may be suitable as we go forward. These steps were in this adaptive plan. I know this graphic here, I apologize, is very busy, but the dots on that plan show decision points where the board could weigh in, take a look at different phases and when they could make decisions about looking and pursuing an additional portion of new water supplies. Of course, we are already planning for phase 1 of additional water use efficiency right now, but the next stage of the plan was to begin hydrogeologic studies for the existing wells and move those towards from emergency to production supply, and then determine a pathway forward for the environmental side of work. So we conducted an RFP for the CEQA work necessary for the studies, for this supply options. We put out the RFP in June of this year. 2 qualified proposals were received. We did have staff from different parts of divisions of the water department review these. Montrose Environmental's proposal was the highest scoring proposal. Mainly it was responsive to the city's needs. The proposal team had a real quality water resource experience, including some local experience with other utilities in the area, and a variety of good project references that aligned with what the city was looking to achieve. The amount of the contract is not to exceed an amount of $448,788. So with that, we have provided you with the proposed professional services agreement, and it was reviewed and recommended by the contract review subcommittee. So the recommendation for you today is recommended by the contract review subcommittee and Santa Rosa Water staff that the Board of Public Utilities by motion approve a professional services agreement with Montrose Environmental Solutions to provide California Environmental Quality Act compliance technical services for the Santa Rosa Water Supply Alternatives Plan in the amount not to exceed $448,788. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Director Martin. As was mentioned, this did come before the contract review subcommittee and it was unanimously approved. So with that, I'll open up for any board member questions or comments. Board Member Wright.
Thank you for the presentation. So this, at the end of the day, we're going to get a document and have it certified for environmental on the project itself of the study. And then in future, we'll have the ability then to tier off individual projects with a much smaller, more concise environmental. How's that going to work?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Board Member Wright. Yeah, so I guess obviously we haven't figured out the exact instrument, but there's a possibility to go into either an EIR or programmatic EIR with this project. But we'll look at the three things that are scoped in this are the conversion of existing emergency groundwater wells to a more production side. A good example would be the Carl A. Peter Springs wells, as well as the Leet well as well. And then looking at the opportunities for new wells, an example would be, something to near Farmers Lane. We had the Martha test well, which was a high producer, so adding additional production wells. And then also looking at some opportunities for aquifer storage and recovery too as well. So it'll be scoped in a way that is flexible, but it will allow the projects to proceed to further design and build for those. So those were it doesn't cover, obviously at this point, we won't be moving towards looking at things like potable reuse or other projects that were in those portfolios until a time that the board starts to give us more direction to do so.
Okay, so then, so for the wells, then once the report is done and certified and all that stuff, then we can go forth and design and bid and do all that stuff. There's no next step in the environmental process?
Correct. But the only challenge I think is there's some changes going on at the county's level in terms of permitting new wells. So the consultant in their proposal was well aware of that and did incorporate the necessary changes and evaluations to make sure that we're able to obtain a new well permit. I think if you've been following the news, there's been some legal challenges and some changes in the way that new wells are permitted. The goal is to have a document that would create some sort of functional equivalency to be able to put forward, say, a new well permit for that. Because if you're going forward today with securing a new well permit from the county, there's, depending upon its location, it's becoming more complex. It's not just a ministerial decision anymore, I guess, is what I should say.
This is getting down in the weeds, but I'm just curious, when you convert a well from emergency to permanent use, does that, the permit for the existing well is insignificant? It has to be re-permitted, I assume, as a full-time well?
Yeah, that's correct, Board Member Wright. The emergency wells we have are permitted today for operation no longer than 2 weeks a year, and they don't have the same level of treatment and requirements. So if you were to convert them to more of a production well, you'd have to take a look at in operations where you'd be obviously using water on a more continuous basis, and then other impacts associated with the actual physical conversion of those wells and in addition to.
Thank you.
Other board member questions or comments? Board Member DeWitt?
Hello, sir. Nice presentation. Thank you very much. I want to clarify a couple of things. The city of Santa Rosa bought some, I'll rephrase that. The county taxpayers bought some land in southwest Santa Rosa, Roseland District, deeded it over to the city, 3 parcels each with wells on them. And those wells were active as the city's Recreation and Parks Department came in. The apparatus, the well pumps and everything else was taken out. So those wells, do they need to be re-permitted, or can they be utilized as they once were full-time used by the occupants of those properties?
I guess I don't know, I'm not have specific familiarity with those wells and their permitting authority.
I'll give you some addresses. You can write them down and then you can look.
Okay.
You ready? 1027 McMinn Avenue, 1370 Burbank Avenue, and 1400 Burbank Avenue all had wells.
Okay.
And the city took the apparatuses off, so one would think that the permits would still be good because they had been in action. The other question is, where is Montrose actually based? Because I have to be very careful about something where I am curious of the name. Are they based here in California?
They're out of, the team is out of Oakland. They are a nationwide firm. The team that is going to be performing this work was formerly of a firm called Horizon. They've done a lot of work in the area under that name, but they were acquired by Montrose.
All right, I'll clarify in order for an abundance of caution, as people say. In my research and activities with the Citizens Cleanup Coalition in Southwest Santa Rosa, we worked for brownfields grants to be given by the US EPA to Sonoma County, and the consultants at that time were called Stantec, but some of their members went off and worked with Montrose. So I want to make sure that that's in the record in case anything comes up on my vote. And maybe I should not vote, perhaps, if those same members of Montrose are involved in this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions or comments? I'll entertain then a motion.
Okay, I'm just finding my spot. Okay.
Through the chair, just really quickly, Board Member DeWitt, I would defer to our council. I don't know, Mr. Cooper, if you have enough information to provide guidance to Board Member DeWitt on whether or not he can vote on this item.
I do not. Board Member DeWitt, if you could please expand on your concern. It sounded to me as if you had worked with them in a prior experience, but I did not hear any financial interest, for example, in this firm that you may have. So if you could just expand and clarify, and then I can give you an opinion as to whether you can participate in a vote or not.
Thank you, sir. I'm always a volunteer, and in this case, the name of the people who went to work with Montrose, I could give that to you, but I've never been involved in any way, shape, or form fiscally.
Yeah, then you are free from a legal perspective to vote on this matter.
Thank you, sir. Y'all heard it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That being said, I'll move that the Board of Public Utilities by motion approve a professional service agreement with Montrose Environmental Solutions to provide California Environmental Quality Act compliance technical services for the Santa Rosa Water Supply Alternatives Plan in an amount not to exceed $448,788.
Second.
A motion by Board Member Wright, seconded by Board Member Badenfort. Now open it up for any public comment on item 8.1. See no one rise. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Board Member Wright?
Aye.
Board Member DeWitt?
Yes.
Board Member Bartholow?
Aye.
Board Member Badenfort?
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnone?
Aye.
And Chair Galvin?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comments on non-agenda matters. If you wish to make comment on non-agenda matters, you can please move to the podium. Seeing no one, that'll take care of public comments. We have no referrals. We have no written communications. I believe we have 2 subcommittee reports. Board Member Wright?
Yes. I'd like to report that the Budget Subcommittee met yesterday, November 6th, to consider Santa Rosa Water's proposed 2025 through 2029 water, recycled water, and sewer rate schedule. Staff and consultant provided an overview of the rate-setting process, 10-year fiscal model, assumptions that were incorporated into the model, the resulting proposed 5-year rate schedule, and the outreach plan to inform our ratepayers of the proposed rate schedule. After review, the subcommittee unanimously recommended approval of the proposed 2025 to 29 water, recycle water, and sewer rate schedule. This item is tentatively scheduled to come before the BPU in study session on November 21. That's my report.
Thank you, and I'll report that the Contract Review Subcommittee met on October 21st and reviewed 2 contracts which were unanimously recommended for approval and were both on today's BPU agenda. The first was the PSA with Montrose Environmental to provide California Environmental Quality Act compliance technical services related to the Santa Rosa Water Supply Alternatives Plan. And the second was the proposed PSA with EKI Environment and Water for preparation of the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan Water Demand and Conservation Analysis for the City of Santa Rosa and other contractors to Sonoma Water. The subcommittee also reviewed a proposed cost-sharing agreement amongst the contractors for the work to be done with the Santa Rosa Water acting as the project manager. And that's the report for the Contract Review Subcommittee. At this time, we'll open up for public comment on item number 12. If you wish to make a comment, please move to the podium. Seeing none, that'll take care of the subcommittee report. Any board member reports? All right, well, Board Member DeWitt.
Yes. A couple of Saturdays ago was Make a Difference Day, a national day of public service, and volunteers in Roseland were along Roseland Creek trying to clean up debris. One of the unfortunate problems is during the dry season, people begin to live in the creek beds, and there were people who were living under the bridge at Burbank Avenue on Roseland Creek, and unfortunately, the first flush came, all kinds of debris and trash down in there, and we weren't able to get it all out. So it's on Roseland Unified School District land, and we didn't know how to handle this to get that stuff out of there. Do we have some sort of a agreement where we can go on to school properties, city volunteers to get this? It's something I thought I could ask here and we'd have legal advice. Thank you.
Director Burke.
Board Member DeWitt, we'll have to look into this and get back to you. Typically, we do not, we would not go on to privately held property unless we'd be working directly with them. So I will check in with the Stormwater and Creeks team, and we will follow up and get you information on that.
What was that?
It's important to tell them that I will volunteer, so it's not a cost to the city. Thank you.
We'll now take public comment on our board member reports. If you wish to make a comment, please move to the podium. See nothing. That'll take care of board member reports. We'll move to the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Galvin and members of the board. I have a very short director's report for you today. One, I wanted to just let the board know that due to the red flag warning event that we just had, there was also public safety power shutdowns, and in response to the public safety power shutdown protocol, the geysers did de-energize their system. Calpine did de-energize their system. And so we have been experiencing a PSPS event with our recycled water system to the geysers down. It is anticipated that that will be lifted today, and that we will see the system re-energize, and then we will be able to restart providing recycled water to Calpine. This will result in a slight increase in water storage levels, but we are still pretty low for this time of year, and so we think that should be accommodated quite easily. A big thank you to our regional operations staff who work really hard with Calpine on coordinating these events, de-energizing the pipeline, and then getting it re-energized when the PSPS event is completed. And then also I wanted to let the board know that board member Grable has tendered his resignation effective, I think about a week and a half ago. So we really appreciate the time and effort and board member Grable's just unwavering support and participation in this board. We're sad to see that he is no longer going to be on the board. He has let his council appointee, council member Fleming, know that he's no longer on the BPU, and hopefully she will be making a replacement before too long. So just wanted to let everyone know, and thank you to board member Grable for his service. We greatly appreciate it. That's my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? All right, we'll take public comment on item number 14. If you wish to make a comment, please move to the podium. Seeing no one move, that'll take care of the director's report. That will take care of our agenda for today, so we are adjourned. Have a good evening.